My name is Megan McClelland, and the speech that I'm delivering today is the Living History speech. This is my audience. For those of you unfamiliar with the events of Pearl Harbor, it occurred on December 7, 1941 in Oahu, Hawaii. The Japanese had been planning a surprise attack on the United States for several months. The frustration within Japan stemmed from their desire to expand within Asia, but the United States not allowing them to do so because of strict trade restrictions. After failed attempts at negotiating, Japan had made up their mind to attack Pearl Harbor. It is believed that the Japanese deliberately planned to attack on a Sunday because they thought it would be the best day to catch the Americans on a break. Despite the United States spotting a submerged submarine about 50 yards from where they were, patrolling at 3:42 in the morning, the attack did not begin until 7:55 a.m. U.S. Commander Logan C. Ramsey spotted a low-flying plane that had dropped something black into the water. He then realized that it was a bomb and ordered the telegraphed operators to send a message out to every ship and base telling them that this was not a drill. The attack lasted until approximately 9:45 a.m. when the Japanese headed back to their aircraft carriers to return home. The end result of this attack was disastrous. 4 U.S. battleships, the Arizona, Oklahoma, California, and West Virginia, had been sunk. 188 U.S. aircraft were destroyed with another 159 damaged. 2,335 servicemen were killed, while 1,143 were injured. Innocent civilians suffered 68 deaths, while another 35 were injured. The Japanese made out with little damage compared to the casualties that the United States had suffered. They only lost 29 aircraft and 5 midget submarines, while only 65 men were killed, and one of them was captured by the United States. Though my grandfather was only 12 years old at the time that Pearl Harbor occurred, he remembers it quite vividly. On that infamous Sunday, he attended an afternoon movie at the Keystone Theater. The theater was located in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, the town where he was born and raised. When the movie let out, he noticed that people had been gathered in small groups and they were talking amongst themselves. There was a lot of buildings surrounded the movie theaters, so he was a little worried that something major had happened. When he walked to his grandmom's house about 4 blocks away from the movie theater, he wanted to see if they knew what had happened. Upon arriving at his grandfather's house, his aunts and uncles were outside, talking in a small group, much like the ones he saw at the movie theater. He then found out that Pearl Harbor had been bombed and that the United States might be going to war. Since he was so young and did not really understand what war meant, he was quite frightened and asked them to explain to him what was going on. He then found out that among the people personally affected in his family were his grandfather and his maternal uncles, Frank and Joe O'Brien. His grandfather had planned on retiring from the police force that following year, but he was unable to do so because the younger cops were going to be drafted into the army. So he ended up staying on the force until World War II had ended. His Uncle Frank joined the Navy, while his Uncle Joe joined the Coast Guard because they didn't want to be drafted into the Army. They had other things that they wished to do. Fortunately, neither of them were sent to war during their duties. So after my grandfather had found out what was going on with his uncles, he returned home after talking with his grandparents. Because he was afraid that his mother would worry about his whereabouts. When he arrived home, his parents had already heard the news as well, and they had the radio on in their living room. The following morning, they went to church for the Holy Day of Obligation, and upon returning home, they listened to President Franklin Roosevelt's speech about Pearl Harbor. He remembers the whole family sitting on the floor in the living room around the radio as the president declared that December 7th was a date which will live in infamy. The president then asked Congress to declare war on Japan. The Senate's vote was 82-0, while the House of Representatives vote was 388-1. My grandfather noted that this has always been something that stuck out to him, that one person would vote against the war, but it turns out that that member was a female, and she said that since she was not allowed to go to war, she didn't want anyone else to have to be sent there either. I have a section from the Honolulu Advertiser. It is a memorial paper that describes the events of Pearl Harbor in detail. It has a background, timeline, description of the aircraft and battleships involved in the attacks, and a map and description of the USS Arizona Memorial, which is located in Oahu, Hawaii. This is interesting to look through because it provides us with pictures that help visualize what actually happened in Pearl Harbor and how large the island actually was. This is a map of all the ships and the aircrafts, just to give you an idea of their sizes and what they look like. The timeline starts at 3:42 in the morning and ends at 10 a.m., which is just a little bit after the last bomb had gone off. So this was a very important historical event that's still being taught about in classrooms today. I found it most interesting that my grandfather chose this event because he was so young at the time, so I didn't really think that it would have such a big impact on him, but it's something that he remembered and kept with him till his 84th year now. So, and when you get a chance to interview somebody who lived through such a significant event, it makes you think. I think that it's interesting that 50 years from now, I could have a grandchild who will ask me what I thought about 9/11 and how I was feeling during that time, and it will still be just as significant then as it was when it really happened. So even if we are not actively a part of something, it still leaves a lasting impact on us that will leave us with a story and memories that are made forever.